Joining me right now is Senate Finance, Homeland Security, and Appropriations Committee member, Senator James Lankford. And Senator, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks for being here.
It's good to see you again.
How did the Saudis miss this? How did the U.S. miss this, knowing the money that has been allocated for defense spending?
Well, one of the challenges they have is that they're facing south to be able to look towards Yemen, to assume the attacks are going to come from there, not across the Gulf area in the Straits, to be able to come straight from Iran. And so that'll be the key factor to be able to come out, as we know that the Iranians have put mines on ships. They've taken hostages of individuals and sailors that are on those ships. They have helped the Houthis in Yemen to be able to spark a civil war right on the southern border. They're funding Hezbollah, they're funding Hamas, they're propping up Bashar Assad. So it's interesting to be able to hear the Iranians say it's really all the Americans' fault for all this tension in the region, when the Iranian regime itself is the one who's been pushing against the entire region.
So what kind of a response would you like to see from the United States, from the Saudis at this point then?
So we've got to begin with two things. One of them is that we really need to put the pressure on the Iranian regime, not on the Iranian people. We don't have a beef with the Iranian people. There are lots of good folks that are literally captives to their own regime at this point. So putting as much pressure as we can on the regime, because they have been the problem since 1979 on the entire region. So that's one thing on it. We've got to also have a united front with the rest of the world. Right now, Europe is still wavering whether it's a problem that Iran is active in terrorism all over the region. So Europe, Macron specifically in the past couple of weeks has been outspoken to say they want to be able to help Iran to be able to come back to the nuclear deal. The nuclear issue is not the issue right now. Right now, it's their proliferation of terrorism around the region. We've got to have a united front to be able to push back on that. Sanctions, additional pressure, additional isolation to push them to the table, and hopefully be able to get that resolved. But the military's got to always be there as a backstop.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting yesterday when the president and Senator Lindsey Graham were back and forth on Twitter. The president had authorized a strike on Iran in response to the downing of a U.S. surveillance drone back in June, but then called it off after he learned more about the potential casualties. Lindsey Graham criticized Trump's approach, writing this: "The measured response by President Donald Trump regarding the shooting down of an American drone was clearly seen by the Iranian regime as a sign of weakness." Trump replied, "No, Lindsey, it was a sign of strength that some people just don't understand." Your reaction there?
No, I think it is a sign of strength. Again, we've seen this over and over again, that Iran is trying to provoke, trying to engage with us. The best thing that we can do is continue to be able to isolate them, to be able to put pressure. Clearly, the pressure the president's putting on Iran is working at this point, that they're trying to find some way to be able to help push back. We need to continue to be able to isolate them. But again, we've got to have the rest of the world actually admit what is obvious to Americans, and that is Iran is the major problem in the region, and to be able to come to the table, to be able to help us isolate them and then be able to push them towards getting a resolution for their own people and for the rest of the region.
Let me move on to your role in the Senate Finance Committee. You are up against, the Congress is up against a deadline to avoid another government shutdown. Members of the House expected to push a resolution to fund the government through November 21st. What should be done here, Senator? When are you expecting the Congress to start reining in spending?
Well, we have a problem with the process. Since 1974, when this particular budget process was put in place right after Watergate, it's only worked 4 times. The debt has gone from just a few billion in 1974 to 22 trillion now. We literally have a process that doesn't work, and so we really need a couple of things here. One is that we've got to have a change in process, and there are several of us that are pushing how can we actually get a better process to get on top of our debt and deficit and to be able to work on it. The second thing is we've got to take government shutdowns off the table. This perpetual focus on getting to a deadline and having a government shutdown just doesn't work. It wastes additional money. The American taxpayer loses in that. Federal families and federal workforce loses in that. So we should be able to have intense debate on budget issues which need to be addressed without having to have government shutdowns in the mix as well. And I have a bill. Maggie Hassan is a part of that as well. It's a very bipartisan bill to basically say if we get to the end of the fiscal year, if we're not resolved, everybody has to stay in town. There's mandatory quorum calls, weekends, weekdays, no one can travel, and we can't move on to other bills other than appropriations. So we're locked in to be able to resolve that issue so we don't have a shutdown and federal families are not affected.
Yeah, no, I think you make a really good point. But at this point, what you have are your colleagues on the left saying we're not going to authorize any more money for defense, for national security, without allowing more spending elsewhere. And if not, the government shuts down. Why can't your side just say, no, we can't continue this out of control spending?
Well, that is exactly the push that we're trying to be able to push. But part of the issue is not only what you're saying about defense is my Democratic colleagues are absolutely blocking an increase in pay for our military. That's what's in this bill. And so we're trying to be able to get an increase in pay to those that are in our military. They're saying, no, we're not going to do it unless we get other priorities and other things. We're trying to be able to get that resolved. First things first, we should work on national defense, and that should be a given for all American people. That's the foundation of our economy, is a secure nation, and then our economy builds on top of that. So this should be a given.
Okay, it should be a given, but it's not. So what if you can't get this moving forward? What's Plan B, Senator?
So Plan B for us at this point is to have a continuing resolution to be able to continue on the debate behind the scenes until November the 21st and to be able to keep pushing it. I continue to be able to push this blocking government shutdowns, which forces us into a spot to be able to continue debate and to try to get it resolved. One of the great challenges of Congress is they'll get close to a deadline, not resolve it, and so they'll do an extension and just walk away and say, well, this will be 6 weeks from now, 8 weeks from now, a couple of months from now. We have to get to a spot where we resolve it, look at deadlines for what they really are, and try to resolve it at that spot. In the meantime as well, we've got to continue to be able to push back on every area. As I mentioned before, on national defense, let's get the issue resolved on our folks in the military and on their pay. Let's get the issue resolved on the border.
Yeah.
Those should be straightforward.
Well, how are you going to get anything done? I mean, look what's going on the left in like the Judiciary Committee with Jerry Nadler, et cetera. They want to impeach Kavanaugh. They want to impeach President Trump. Yet you've got USMCA hanging in the balance. You've got the border hanging in the balance. You've got all of these other issues in terms of Iran, North Korea, China. So, I mean, what do you see toward, let's say the next month, because once Thanksgiving comes around, then things quiet down again. So are you going to be able to get anything done before, for example, the Canadian elections, October 21st?
Yeah, so one of the great priorities that we have is what you mentioned is the USMCA. That has to begin in the House of Representatives. The American people have put Nancy Pelosi in the chair. The only way to fix that is the American people changing who is in the chair there based on the next election that's happening in the coming days. But right now, we've got to be able to have this USMCA agreement come up. Replacing NAFTA does nothing but help our economy. And so this is not about President Trump getting a win, as the Washington Post just put out a big editorial saying, give the president his win on USMCA. This is not about giving President Trump a win. It's about giving the American people and our businesses and our trading environment a win. Right now, the House of Representatives is saying they want to cut off all aid to farmers. At the same time, they also won't do the USMCA just to try to hurt President Trump in his election. That's hurting people, not hurting the president. And so our focus is try to bring to light the issues that the House of Representatives is doing right now for us to be able to continue to do the right thing, get us into the room and try to actually get things resolved.
All right, Senator, it's good to have you on the program this morning. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Maria.
We'll be watching. Senator James Lankford there.